In this video, I'm going to show you the easiest football trade you're likely to see throughout the Premier League this season. It is something we saw twice in the opening weekend of the season, and it's something you're going to continue to see during the rest of the season. The opportunity I'm talking about here is a drift in a team's match odds before the kick-off of the game. To understand why betting odds either move out or come in, we first need to recognise how the market prices the teams at certain odds. On a betting exchange, like a traditional bookmaker, you can place a normal back bet. However, you can also take the role as a bookmaker by placing what is known as a lay bet. A lay bet is making a bet that a certain event won't occur. For example, in a football match, if you lay Team A, you'll make a profit if Team A don't win the match. That is either Team B winning the match or the game ending in a draw. In essence, on an exchange, the person laying is the bookmaker, and they are liable to pay out if the bet comes in. If you were to lay a team at odds of 3 with a £100 stake, it is equivalent of taking another user's £100 back bet for that team. You will keep the £100 back stake from the backer on the exchange if what they have backed on doesn't come in. However, if what they have backed on does come in, you are responsible for paying them out at odds of 3. When Betfair trading, we can take advantage of this, as you're able to back and lay the same team in the same game and profit from the game regardless of how the game actually ends up in play. For example, you could back and lay Arsenal and profit from Arsenal even if Arsenal go on to lose the game. To do this, all you have to do is back at a higher price than you lay at. In terms of a game's odds and why the teams are priced the way they are, and whether those odds are either going to come in or drift out, we first need to understand that there is a natural tension on the exchange between backers and layers. Backers always want to back at the highest possible price. This gives them the most value if their bet wins. Oppositely, layers always want to lay at the lowest possible price. A layer will always win the same stake regardless of the odds of the market. However, the layer always wants to lay at the lowest possible odds because in the event the lay bet loses, they'll have to pay out the least amount of liability to the backer. As you can see, the effect of this is that the price in a market meanders around a little bit. It doesn't stay at one fixed price. This is a graph taken before the season started of Manchester City to win the Premier League title outright. This is before a ball has even been kicked, but as you can see, the price doesn't stay static. It's constantly fluctuating depending on if people are backing or laying. You can see here that when the odds get low enough, layers find this value, so they begin to actively lay the selection. When laying, this sends the price outwards, as you can see on the graph. This then reaches a value where layers begin to stop laying because it's no longer valuable to continue laying at this higher price. Because remember, if this position loses, they'll have to pay out the most money to the backer. At the same time, backers begin to think that the price has got big enough where it's now value to back. Remember, backers want to back at the highest price so they can make the most money in the event that their bet wins. So they'll see that the price has drifted out and think, this is good value to back now, and begin to back in the market. And once again, this has an effect on the price, and the price begins to come back in, which is known as a steam. This continues until the price is too short again and the layers start to lay again, and this cycle can happen constantly across many markets in many sports. This tension between backers and layers exists all the time when pre-match football trading on Betfair. Because a ball hasn't been kicked yet, the movement in the odds is based entirely on people's opinions, as the only thing that can impact the odds is people's opinions and how much money they are willing to back on those opinions being correct. It can be difficult to trade pre-match like this, as sometimes the price can break out of this range and move in one direction or another. However, there are certain instances where it will be so obvious which way the odds are going to move that it will be the easiest opportunity you'll have all season to make money from Betfair trading. The strategy is the anticipation of a drift in a team's odds dependent on the release of critical team news. Upon the release of a key player for the team being injured and therefore unable to play a game, the price on that team will begin to drift rapidly depending on how key that player is. In fact, there were 2 instances during the opening weekend of this Premier League season. This happened in both the Brentford and Arsenal game and the Everton and Southampton games. Firstly, with Arsenal, the backers and layers were fairly content with the pre-match price for Arsenal being between 1.9 and 1.95 before kick-off. At this point, there was no critical team news out, and that was reflected in the market having a fairly static price, as people were fairly confident that the odds for Arsenal were correct at this time. However, a good few hours before kick-off, some very important team news came out, which changed everything in the market. 2 of Arsenal's marquee attacking players, Lacazette and Aubameyang, were both ruled out of the fixture due to illness. Hearing this news, it became immediately apparent which way the odds of Arsenal were going to move. And lo and behold, following the release of the news, Arsenal's price drifted all the way from about 1.9 up to 2.2. To put this opportunity in perspective, if you'd placed a lay bet at 1.9 and a back bet of 2.2, and let's say we was using a £100 stake, you would have made a £30 free bet on Arsenal. This free bet could have been cashed out across all three outcomes of the match to profit regardless of the result of the match. A similar situation occurred in the Everton vs Southampton game, however slightly different. It was announced that 5 of Everton players would have to isolate due to coronavirus, and therefore wouldn't have been available to play Southampton on Saturday. Annoyingly, it initially wasn't made public which of the 5 players had to isolate, so it was difficult to predict how far Everton's odds would drift. However, it was fairly obvious that they were going to drift to some extent. If it was Everton's best 5 players that had to isolate, then the price would absolutely drift massively. However, even not knowing which of the 5 players had to isolate, Everton's odds drifted from about 2 all the way up to 2.2. Unfortunately, personally for me, I wasn't able to profit from these two, as when these 2 pieces of news were released, I was unfortunately working and wasn't able to capitalise. However, I'm well aware that similar situations like this are going to happen throughout the rest of the season, and I'm always going to be keeping a lookout for team news, as this really is the easiest strategy that you can ever do. Some other examples from last season was when Manchester United had to play something crazy like 4 games in 7 days. Everybody knew that one of those games United would have to play a very weak squad. Therefore, I think it was for the Leicester game, Man United's pre-match price drifted massively. Also last season, I remember Harry Kane returning from injury earlier than anticipated, and as Harry Kane is one of Tottenham's best players, this caused Spurs' price to come steaming in upon the release of the team sheet. There were a few coronavirus examples last season as well. I remember Villa's team having to isolate completely and then having to play basically a reserve team. All of these opportunities don't rely on what's actually happening on the pitch. It's simply opinion based, and this is where you can make profit. You're going to lay the team and back when the prices moved higher. All of this is happening before the game has started, and it's where you're going to make the profit. It's critically important to never let the position go in play. Before the game has started, you want to have cashed out for either a win or a loss. You do not want to let the game go in play, regardless of how confident you might be that they're going to go on to win the game or lose the game, whatever it might be. Discipline is really important in trading, and you cannot forget that. How much you can win from this strategy is entirely dependent on the stakes that you're using. Obviously, the bigger stakes, the bigger the profit. And this strategy has very little downside, as the drift is almost certainly going to happen, and it's never going to steam too far against you, as this is only pre-off trading. You do want to be careful that you don't get on the drift too late, as the price is going to move out. So say in the Arsenal example from earlier, you don't want to start laying when it's gone all the way up to 2.2. There is a limit of how far the price is going to drift, so be wary of that. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have any comments on the strategy or anything to do with Betfair trading or football trading, please don't hesitate to leave them in the comment section below.